In this video, I'm going to talk about the menstrual cycle and the role of hormones in it, as well as the 4 key phases of interest, as well as the features that are occurring, and a plot of what these hormone levels are doing over time when a woman is in menarche, and that is a mature woman who is ovulating once every 28 days and is ready to be impregnated by some dude. And so the first thing we're going to do is talk about these 4 hormones. FSH stands for follicle stimulating hormone, and its job is to mature the egg. And the textbooks refer to it as the ovum. LH stands for something referred to as luteinizing hormone, and its job is to trigger ovulation. So the spike to trigger ovulation. We also have estrogen, and estrogen's role is to establish the endometrium. And the endometrium is the lining inside the uterus that will actually nourish an egg that is released every menstrual cycle. And progesterone's role is to protect the endometrium after it's been developed. So after we've established those base layers, progesterone keeps everything intact for that current cycle. And so the 4 phases of interest are the follicular, ovulation, luteal, and menses. And what's going to happen in the follicular phase is that we're going to see the egg and the endometrium develop. And so, given what we know about these 4 hormones in this plot or table, what that tells us is because we're going to want to mature, develop the egg, we would expect levels of FSH to rise. Luteinizing hormone isn't going to be doing anything because it's that's not its time yet. So the egg still exists in the ovaries. Estrogen will be falling from the previous phase, but it will begin to rise again, as we see in this plot here, indicated in the gray line. And this is a very important plot to remember, especially in biology classes. And so as estrogen levels rise, we begin to form back the endometrium for that current cycle. And then progesterone, because the endometrium is still kind of being shed from the last cycle, is falling, so we don't want to be protecting it. Now what's going to happen in ovulation is the egg is released from the follicle, and it's deposited into the peritoneal cavity. We're going to want to continue maturing the egg, so FSH will continue to rise. And at this point, we will also see an enormous spike in levels of LH. So this orange line here, so this spike right here indicates this ovulation part, specifically that. And levels of estrogen will continue to rise because we want to continue to build up the endometrium, and progesterone levels will continue to decline. And as we can see, it's the estrogen levels the progesterone levels are still relatively constant throughout this process. And then in the luteal cycle, what will happen, the key thing, is the corpus, I'll abbreviate luteum, will make progesterone to protect the endometrium. So we're going to want to, at this point in luteal phase, the endometrium is considered, as big as it's going to get. So we just want to sustain it now while the egg exists in the uterus. And at this point, there's no real need to keep maturing the egg. So levels of FSH will begin to fall. Levels of the luteinizing hormone will remain constant. But there was a sharp decline afterwards. It is the spike that marks ovulation, so there's no need for it to continue rising. And then levels of estrogen will continue to rise, and progesterone will also be rising because we're going to keep building up the ovaries. The endometrium, and we're going to want to keep intact what we have. And then finally, what happens in menses is we shed the endometrium. And this should hint at a idea that what's going to happen is across the board, all of these hormones are going to be dropping because we don't care about maturing the egg anymore. We need to prepare for the next spike of LH so that we can spark ovulation in the next cycle. The estrogen levels will fall because we don't want to keep building up the endometrium, and progesterone will also fall because and this is the most critical one, because we don't want to protect it, we want to shed the uterus so we can make room for the next cycle. And it is very important to note that this cycle I've just described is for a non-fertilized process. And so things do get different if the egg is fertilized. The hormone levels will respond appropriately in those situations. And so that's something we can discuss in a future video. But for an introduction to the menstrual cycle, a non-fertilized menstrual cycle, these are the key hormones that are at work, as well as the key features of the 4 phases that we're seeing. And so I hope you guys find it useful. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.